Welcome back, everyone, or welcome. If you've The goal of this session is to introduce you to this new resource that our champions have put together that is directly for students, and really for you to think about that different or slightly different lens of reaching students directly without them having to come through the grown-ups, the teachers, whatever, that really direct support. So before we go any further though, could I get, I'll go in as best alphabetical order as I can muster. Lily and Maya, if you would like to, Lily Dolan, first introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your particular flavour of neurodivergence, about the Young Neurodiversity Champions generally, and then we will dig in further as we go. Lily D, over to you.
Hello, hello. Hopefully you can hear me.
Perfect.
My name is Lily Doolin. I am 20 years old living in Hawke's Bay. So I have ADHD and was diagnosed in my last year of high school. I have definitely noticed throughout my life and my schooling that ADHD affected me in a lot of ways, being not diagnosed and diagnosed. Um, One thing that I really enjoy about the Young Neurodiversity Champions is that we are such a broad range of people who have all these amazing things about them and don't let their neurodiversity define them. Um, I think that quite a lot of our kind of behind the scenes motivation is to kind of see our neurodiversity as a superpower, and I definitely see mine as that. I've actually had the amazing opportunity to become the CEO of the Young Neurodiversity Champions this year. So I will be taking over from Kartini very, very shortly, which is super exciting. Yeah, was that it, Madeleine?
Amazing. Tell us something awesome about your brain.
About my brain. My brain is so awesome. I find my creativity to be the most amazing thing about my brain. I'm very often thinking outside of the box, and quite often people will backlash on that and say maybe let's go the normal route, but you've always got to give the creative way a try. Yeah, I'm just a very creative person. I do heaps of craft. I studied architecture. um yeah, so it's just been, yeah, a really fun kind of experience learning where that whole burst of creativity has come from and how I can kind of channel that as well into the YNCs and promoting neurodiversity as a whole.
Amazing. Thank you, Lily. Lily Robertson, are you with us? Would you like to pop your video on and tell us a little bit about the flavour of your neurodivergence? We got Lily with us. Oh, there we are. Can't hear you, Lily. All right. Do we want to keep working on that one, Lily? And then while you work on it, Lily, send me a little message. Maya, do you want to jump in and tell us about you and the flavor
Absolutely.
of your divergence?
Sweet. So my name is Maya Penhe. I am studying down at Otago. I am 21. I got diagnosed with ADHD and autism when I was 16. I organized it myself, which I was very lucky to be able to do at the time. Um, I am very also lucky to have been involved with Young University Champions since it originally started up a few years ago now. I absolutely love the community we have put together, the fact that we are quite literally a show of force from the younger generation saying, hey, actually, our voices matter. and we need to be understood. And I could not be more happy to be involved with all of this. I'm trying to think. Okay, one thing that I adore about my brain is I kind of see it as a sponge. That's how I deem my superpower from my brain, is I've always been one for always learning new things. But I'm able to retain the oddest information and interesting things here and there that has really allowed me to be able to grow, be able to interlink a lot of things. That's one thing that I'm doing a lot with my degree, and what I want to do in my workforce and in my life is bring a lot of what people don't see as interconnected points of view and kind of correlations, and bringing that in to see a new way to handle issues and like basically a new way to learn and grow. And I'm very invested in that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Lily A, would you like to jump in?
Yes, I am Lily A. Armstrong. I am a young neurodivergent person. My brain very often switches between periods of hyper focus and unfocus, and
With no,
is often very sensitive to sensory information due to my autism and ADHD. I dropped out of high school in year 10 in large part because of this, and wasn't diagnosed with either until very recently.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Lily R, when you're ready, do feel free to just wave at me and jump in. Lily Doolan, can you just tell us about the Young Neurodiversity Champions as a group generally?
Yes, so the Young Neurodiversity Champions are a group of, I think we've got about 15 of us, all around the country between the ages of 16 and 24. We all have some form of neurodiversity, whether we're diagnosed or not. We include everybody. And a very big part of the Young Neurodiversity Champions is advocacy, and we are hoping to bring awareness to neurodiversity in schools, in the healthcare sector, in kind of all aspects of the world, basically, in our whole communities. For me now, it is a big focus bringing it into the workplace. I've just started my kind of first, as I'd call it, big girl job. So I think that we have a lot of opportunity to spread awareness, and the Young Neurodiversity Champions have taken that up, and we are fighting for equity. We are fighting for fairness in school and easier learning opportunities. We are fighting for easier diagnosis for children and adults. And it's just overall a really cool organization. It is just so positive, and we are all so committed to getting the word about neurodiversity out there.
Amazing. The concept of champions, just for people watching, we've brought together, our organisation has brought together a group of young people that we have really built together and who are flying. But that concept of finding the champions in your context is a really interesting one for you to consider, perhaps in your school or cluster. How do you find your young people who can advocate, who can champion for these ideas? Lily Robertson, glad you are with us. Fantastic. Do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your brain? Oh, you're a little bit glitchy. There we go. Oh, but we can't hear you. Oh, good. We'll have a little play in the background and we'll come back. Okay? Absolutely guaranteed. So while you have a little look-see, What let me come back to this slide here about thriving in year 9. Where this idea has come from, it was an actual direct request to one of our champions about from a parent of a student in year 9, and this particular student was having a hard time. And the parent kind of saying, oh, could you have a chat? Could you kind of do some of that direct support, which is fantastic and absolutely. But thinking about that idea, going a bit bigger, what our champions have put together is a wee booklet, Thrive in Year 9, which is all about that transition between primary and secondary style of education, where in primary education, kids are well scaffolded, well supported, one teacher all day, every day. And then in a secondary context, which could be year 9, but equally could be year 7, there's a big change into a much more independent, self-directed, higher expectations, more transitions, more of everything. And just that recognition that that transition point is hard. And it can be particularly hard for our young neurodivergent people. And how do we best support them in that time of transition? So in this guide, you can download it straight off our website here. It starts with our students, some of our champions, just sharing their experiences. And on that note, how are we doing, Lily? Do we have any sound? Not quite. We'll keep trying and we'll get there. So in our guide here, each of our champions who is featured in our guide, and it's not all of them, just shares a little bit about their experience of moving into year 9. And if we think about that, perhaps if you're a teacher in RTLB and you think about students' experiences in that transition and then asking them directly, what were the sticking points? What were the things that worked and didn't work? Luckily, we don't have to rely on the guide today. We've got some people that we can directly ask. So, Lily D, this is a little bit of your story here that's featured in our guide, but what was it like for you moving into year 9? What was great and what was not so great? Lily D.
Yeah.
Too many lilies here.
Too many lilies. Yeah, so I am from Hawke's Bay, which is reasonably smaller than kind of Wellington, definitely smaller than Auckland. My primary school was just over 100 kids, and my intermediate was just over 100 kids as well. We may have had just 100, in intermediate. So I went to Napier Girls High School, which is one of the kind of mainstream high schools in Hawke's Bay. I showed up on my first day with 300 other New Year 9s and over 1,000. I think there's about 1,400 girls at that school now. So it was a huge adjustment for me. There was these massive classes. There was so many people. And for me, I was really excited going into first year of your high school years. You know, you feel a bit more grown up and, oh, I'm going and I'm going to have all these teachers and have all these different classes to move around. And yeah, definitely the first week was a lot of adjusting and finding your way around. For me, I found it really cool to be able to have the opportunity to meet new people. That was a big thing for me, was meeting all the new girls who obviously hadn't been to my tiny little primary school or my tiny little intermediate, and I actually made a really solid group of friends in my first week. some of the things that I noticed going further through, not just in year 9, but further through my schooling, was that the workload and quite often the teaching style isn't really set up for, particularly for me, an ADHD brain, but just neurodiverse brains in a whole. Yeah, as you can see on the screen, some things that did help me. My mum, she's a very organized person, so she has kind of passed that gene on to me, and I am continuously using a diary. I always have a calendar. I always have a to-do list. I have some very cool to-do lists sitting at home in my drawer, waiting to be used. And I think just having exciting things to look at that may have the task on it, but something that will draw your eyes to it and say, oh, I need to do that. And also the dopamine. I'm sure everybody probably has seen the Instagram, the Facebook videos about the dopamine of crossing something off a list. That's a big thing for me, is being like, oh, I achieved it, crossing it off, and knowing that that will make me feel productive is something that, has really helped me through primary school, high school, and university as well, and now into my work, into the workforce as well. And another thing that helped me was really making sure I had a consistent routine. I still do this to this day. I get up and do the exact same things in the morning, every single morning. I get home and I will do the exact same things every night before I go to bed, or even when I'm coming home. If something needs cleaning, it will be on the top of my priority list before I carry on everything else. But yeah, definitely the homework, just scheduling a time and having a dedicated place to do homework was one thing that really helped me. Quite often I find that your bedroom is not actually the best place to study, and I think you'll find a lot of students will study in their bedroom. I see having a bit of a space that I like to call an office, or just a bit of a breakout room at home. This can be for kind of anyone, as long as it's not near a couch, near a bed, and you have somewhere dedicated to actually sit and do your work. You will get it done a lot quicker than sitting on the couch, because we all know distractions. And make sure that, just eating, making sure that you're hydrated. I think that's also a big thing about brain power, is if we are looking after our bodies will look after us. So, yeah.
And these are really simple strategies. And I think, as the educators in the room are all probably, or maybe, thinking, yeah, we say that to kids all the time. We talk about lists, and we talk about routines, and we talk about schedules, and we talk about, eat, drink, and all of these things. And yes, we do. But imagine the power of students saying this to other students, not just the teachers again blathering on about these things. Actually, young people sharing their stories, their tips, directly, without us kind of interfering in the process. I think that is really powerful. Thank you, Lily. Right.
Sorry, I just have one more thing to add.
Yes, please.
From my perspective, as a daughter of a teacher and a special, and RTLB, sorry, and an LSC. So I have found that my mum does quite a lot of kind of challenges, she calls them, with her students. I think that would be a really cool way to implement just these small kind of things that may help a neurodivergent student into the classroom, saying, hey, for homework tonight, let's say on the Google Classroom, you have an assignment set up that is set up a workspace. And at home, if they have the space to do it, they set up the workspace, they take a photo, and maybe the next day you come into the classroom and say, hey, how how did you set up the workspace? Why do you think this is going to work for you? And then try and set that routine of going home and say, let's take a photo every night for a week of you doing homework in your workspace, and setting that kind of routine up. I think that would be a really powerful way to do it. Obviously, it hasn't been tried, so I can't stand on that. Can't stand on it too much, but I think that would be really powerful for some students, especially with ADHD, having that kind of direction on how to do it rather than just doing it themselves.
And just being told to do it, that accountability loop can be really powerful. Right. Amazing tip. Thank you so much. Lily R, do we have you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
I think this time, yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Apologies about that. I had to go
Okay.
deep into my settings to figure out what was going on. I'm Lily. I'm 18 and a student at the University of Otago studying health sciences. And I have autism and sensory processing disorder. And I would say what makes my brain probably a bit special is I have a really good memory, for better or worse, for the people around me. But I have a very big, good memory. I can remember things that are very small and minute and just be like, oh, small detail, here you go. Yeah.
Amazing strength. And seeing as we have you, tell us about what it was like for you moving into high school or intermediate, wherever that biggest kind of transition was for you. What was it like? What worked well? What didn't work well for you at that point?
So I also came from a very small school and went into a city school. It wasn't quite as big, but pretty bigger than what I was used to. And I really struggled within those first few years, especially because a lot of my sensory processing disorder things came up. And suddenly, there was just so much stimuli that I wasn't used to, just being shoved in my face. But what I really found that helped me was noise cancelling headphones, lifesavers that they are. Those really helped me to focus and get through school. I don't think I could have survived without them. But also for keeping on task and that, I like to use habit trackers because it's like a visual representation of what you're doing right, and it gives you that dopamine. And often there's inbuilt things with these apps that make it a bit more exciting than just a to-do list, and that works for me personally. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And both of you so far have talked about that change from small to big, and just the volume of people, the volume of noise, the volume of everything, making a really big impact, and specifically around that sensory stuff. And noise cancelling headphones is the most simple, absolutely simple way to reduce that volume. So super easy strategy. Excellent. Maya, tell us about your transition into that high school-ish context. What was it like? What worked? What didn't?
I struggled a lot, socially, especially. Academically, I was very lucky. I stayed at very consistently minor upscales from my schools. I started at, yes, a small primary school, but my intermediate went up in size and then high school up again. So it wasn't too drastic of a change for me. However, most of my struggles were mental, and I did not struggle academically. I did socially, and I did with teachers a lot, in the way that it took a lot of time for me to actually suss out why I struggled so much, but I actually have been taking notes. I think one benefit of having multiple of us talking is you see just the wide range of how the same neurodiversity, you could have the same students with the same diagnoses and have it affect their schooling so drastically differently. Because for me, I cannot hold a routine to save my life. I never did homework. I did not pay attention in class because it wasn't interesting for me. And for me, a part of that went with the changing of schools specifically. It was new teachers. And I had no trust or faith in new teachers initially. And for me, it was essentially, I always struggled with the prospect of needing to respect people in authority because they are in authority. So for me, I was like, no, why would I respect somebody unless they show that they're worth it? Which is a problematic point of view for a young child who has authority issues. But for me, a lot of that came through with the longer I spent in a classroom, the more I would actually just conversate with my teacher. Because I struggled socially, I found it easier to talk to the teacher about my classwork than my classmates. And honestly, it meant that my favorite teachers have stuck with me to this day of how phenomenal they were for me. And that left a really good impact that I ended up taking on. And now I'm in university, I'm able to tell I struggle less with that. However, one other thing that I think was a really big one for me moving into high school and intermediate, like that big change for me, was I don't really get that instant gratification from crossing something off a list. To-do lists do quite literally nothing for me, which is really unfortunate. I really wish they helped. So for me, I've had to work on my own system of do a task, do a different task, and there's that shift in task of completion from one task into a different one. For me, it isn't gratification, but it's the fact that I want to do the second one. Doing the first one, I have to do it first, right? So I often link something that I want to do to, oh, what's something I have to do before that? Quite physically, like I have to clean my desk in order to play a card game on it. I have to clean up a space in order to do arts and crafts. I actually got introduced to this concept accidentally by one of my intermediate teachers. He wanted to open our class up a little bit to the different framework that high school is. So for the last week or two of class, he came up with a new format of everything that each person had to do would be up on the board. When you finish a task, you cross off of the board. When you completed all of them, you had unobstructed free time, which could be going out with other people who have nothing left to do and playing a sports game. Could be working on a project that you want to do in class. Could be, as long as like it wasn't disrupting anyone else, anything. So for me, that meant that because I could see something I wanted to do, tasks physically standing in the way because the teacher checked them off, I was done with all of my work before 11:30, 10 a.m. because I had a reason to want to do it. So I'd do it. And then I'd sit in the corner playing. I would bring my old little Nintendo DS to play Pokemon. Because again, I struggled socially, but that was something that I could do and talk to a few of my classmates about. So I would play Pokemon and they'd come up and talk to me and we'd talk about Pokemon cards when they were done. But I would be sitting there for hours, so I brought my games along. It was brilliant for me to be able to see, oh, I want to do this. There are things in the way. Now I can do them. And for me, that's what had me working the hardest in school was how can I quickly do this to the best of my ability? Because it would be a waste of my time to do it badly and not learn anything, because that's the goal. So I would lock in so hard because the ability to do something I wanted to do was my goal. That was my dopamine for after a task.
Easy hook.
One
Love it.
thing, there's one other thing that I
One
very
more.
much so. This was my biggest struggle in high school, and that was the inflexibility of it. Because when you're at younger schools and when children are younger, there is the expectation of, yeah, some of the kids are going to want to be doing different things. Whereas when you get to high school, they have this rigidity that I struggled with so much. And it was the rigidity in everything from you have to be in every what do they call it? Assembly. You have to be sitting still through every assembly. There is no reason you should ever have to leave early. To the fact that there was a certain expectation of what alternate arrangements are meant to look like. That kind of standardization of, oh, for those who need help, this is what our help looks like for everyone. And it kind of took me down an equity rabbit hole that led to me ending up in Neurodiversity Champions. I struggled with that a lot in high school, and it's something to keep in mind is your students' needs will always look different, even if the student struggles look similar.
I think that is such an important point, and you started with that as well, that it's not the diagnosis, the label, it's the student. what works for them, not what works for ADHD. Taking it from that student first perspective, so super important. And already the three of you, your stories are so different, and what works is so different straight away. So in this guide, that's why we've not put a guide for here's how you do year 9. Instead, here are some stories, here are some things that have helped other people. Do what you want with that information. Yep. So it's that diversity of perspective. We talked about that right at the start of today, that when you're building a neuro-inclusive school, it's not about here is the one right way. And it's not about doing it alone. It's about doing it together and getting all of those different voices in. And on that note, one more different voice. Lily A., would you like to share about your transition from primary into that secondary style context and what might be similar or different, what worked for you, what didn't?
When transitioning from primary to secondary school, the main problem I had was what I've now come to know as modal switching. That is switching between physically from one classroom to another, one activity to another. In primary, because it's all handled by the same teacher, they often work in a transition. But I found in my high schools, they did not have. Some teachers had transitions, and those were classes where I was really able to thrive, and some classes didn't. And what I have learned is that the brain is a bit like a muscle. It needs to be warmed up and cooled down. It needs to be pushed, but not broken to be improved. And if you try and exercise and improve your muscle without that warm up, without that cool down, it's going to hurt more. It's not going to be as effective. What that meant for me was burnout in the end.
Interesting. Just explain that connection between that changing modes and the process from that being a challenge towards burnout. Because it sounds like there might be steps in between.
Yes. So when switching tasks, let's say I would go from woodworking to English. I would be in English class, and my brain wouldn't be thinking about English. My brain would be thinking about, how does woodworking work? Still, it wouldn't have cooled down from woodworking and warmed up into English mode, so to speak. But then I had this pressure on myself of, I need to be focusing on this. I need to be learning. I need to be getting good grades. And I would force myself to try and engage, even though I was struggling to engage. I'd force myself. And that requires a very high mental load for me, at least.
Right. That's the step. It requires that bigger load, which is going to fry things, which is going to lead to burnout. Is that right?
Yes. Much like a muscle. You don't warm it up first. You're going to hurt yourself by trying to exercise.
Yeah. Amazing analogy. Fantastic. Great question, Caroline. What does a good transition look like for you?
Something some of my teachers would do was a really small warm up. So for English, what one of my English teachers did, but other English teachers didn't, was say, put up a prompt on the board and say, write something based off this prompt. And we would do that for 5 minutes. And it wouldn't be marked, it wouldn't be judged. The teacher would look at it, give feedback, but it was always, there was never any stress about that. So that's what a warm-up would look like. And then the cool down,
just as important, because it's not
just as important.
Yeah.
the cool down for that would often be, for me, what I found was best cool down was often the exact same thing, that return to a low stress, simple, easy feedback, but not marked, not judged. Just, oh, you could do, why are you doing that way? How do you feel about potentially trying this out?
So it's not a complete nothing task. It is still engaged with the teacher and with learning, but it's not high stakes. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, and what I have found for me is that as a student, if that doesn't exist, for me, if that's not being provided, what I will do is I will do that myself in that walking time. I'll do that in my head, or when I'm doing my own self-directed learning, do that warm up, do that cool down for myself. It doesn't have to be on the teacher end; it can be on the student end.
Yep.
But I do personally, I had to develop that strategy myself.
Yeah.
And
amazing. Yep. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So great question. I've just shared a little link about tendrils, which has got the most fabulous wee comic strip about tendrils that just it popped into my head while Lily was talking about that idea. So much so. Okay, and Caroline asked, okay, and what do we do? How do we help our kids in year 8? And we do help them in year 8 and we help them in year 9. Or if the transition is year 6 to 7, it's year 6 and year 7. And it's more than, I was talking to a high school recently and they said, oh, yes, we do a transition day when kids start in year 9, and it's only the year 9s come on that day and they have a walk around the school. And then our year 13s come and they help them. And so there's 2 days of transition. And I think for many of our neurodivergent students, transition isn't about 2 days. It's about the build up during year 8. And it's about during year 9. And the transition is a much more longer term prospect, not a here's your one day of transition is a thing. So supporting our kids directly. So this guide can go directly to students. Teachers can work with this guide and work with it in all sorts of different ways with their students. But what we've put together in the guide is 5 sets of ideas. So this is not the everything for everyone at all times, because all of our kids are different, as we've just heard very, very directly. But we've kind of put together 5 big lumps of ideas. So Lily's one here, or Lily D, we have far too many here, is about systems. Because as she said before, those systems really supported how she worked and what worked really well for her. So we put together some ideas about systems, but then as a teacher, if you're saying, right, folks, you're going to develop systems that work for you, kids go, what for? What about? What do you mean? So we've drilled into a few of the specific things that we have heard from neurodivergent kids that are sticking points, right? Remembering where you're meant to be and where you're meant to be, different places, because this can be a really new experience. We've heard from many neurodivergent young people that remembering where you're meant to be and when you're meant to be there is a fundamental sticking point. It is just one of the things that is no, can't deal with this. Too hard, right? So systems around that, systems around getting yourself organized, your stuff. What needs to be done, as Lily D was talking about, checklists, schedules, sticky notes, apps, habit tracking apps are effective for some, and as Maya says, not for her. So, and then Maya's just raised a really important point there also, that it's always just a process of feeling it out, trying it out. It's not going to be, here are the guaranteed solutions. So one of our sets of strategies is around building systems. One is around understanding how your own brain works. And I just wondered if just really quickly, I could get each of you, and I'll get also Charlotte to jump in just a second, could tell us just really quickly how you have come to understand how your own brain works. Who wants to take that on? How have you been able to do that?
I'll go first if you like.
Awesome, thank you.
So for me, coming into high school, obviously not being diagnosed, that was a huge transition. As I went through my high schooling years, I did start to notice that maybe something was different about my brain to kind of my peers and other people around the school. After being diagnosed and going to university and now working in a workplace, I have found that my brain works very well when I have everything down somewhere. I have everything listed or just even written down in a note on my phone. That is definitely one thing that really helps me. And I think that another thing that I've seen about like how my brain works is the need to take a break and just get home and just switch off from it for a while. And that can be completely just sitting on the couch and being a slob for the afternoon, or that can be me in my craft room creating all my new cups and products and stuff that I do on my weekends. Yeah, so it definitely looks different for everyone. But yeah, one thing that I've noticed is that my brain does not retain information. It needs to be written down, and that it is healthy for you to switch off sometimes and just have a bit of a break.
Amazing, thank you. And how, just thinking about your school experience, and probably for all of you, how were you supported to build those understandings of your own brain, or were you supported to build those understandings?
I'll just carry on here. I was not. I
Short
was
answer, easy.
Yeah, I was seen as the naughty kid, the kid who never listened. I was just very not engaged. I really struggled to stay on task, sit still on the mat. I struggled with pretty much everything, friendships, relationships with teachers, and quite often I was in the middle of drama. So there is a lot of stuff and a lot of behavior within that should have been noticed as a neurodiversity and should have been brought up as a concern, but nothing ever happened. And yeah, I think it's just really important for educators in future, now that we are seeing more of a neurodiverse population as such come into their schooling years, and also more of an awareness around it, that teachers are aware and can notice those differences and are able and willing to support, whether it is the smallest thing or a really big thing. If you are willing to give it a go and willing to help your students, those students will thrive and they will thank you 100% later in their life for it as well.
Absolutely. So in Lily's answer to that specific bit, what helped you understand your own brain? short answer, no, which is a real challenge for us as educators. Not only do we need to do their noticing ourselves, but we need to help our students do their own noticing, their own understanding of their own brains, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And that's one of the tips that's in this guide as well for kids themselves, is to understand their own brains first, right? Think about how their brains work. What is it that my brain is great at, or what is not? Fantastic thought there, Lily. Amazing. Understanding that and that role of masking in there. Oh, thank you so much, Deb. That's just a transcription error on my behalf. Absolutely, that's tendril theory. We have Charlotte, who's another one of our Young Neurodiversity Champions, just joined. Amazing. Charlotte, do you just want to jump in quickly and tell us something, maybe, or introduce yourself and maybe tell us about how were you supported to understand your own brain as you entered into high school, maybe specifically?
Yeah, kia ora everyone. So my name's Charlotte. Sorry for joining late. I just came straight from class. So yeah, I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was 16, and then ADHD till I was 20, pretty recently. So going into year 9 was a really tough transition. I think the transition from primary to intermediate was the worst, but going from intermediate to high school, year 9, I didn't really fully understand my brain. But I was in this really good class where teachers kind of noticed my brain worked quite differently, but they couldn't really put. I was in this class, it was called FFL, so Future Focused Learning, and it was quite self-guided, the work. You had like really small class sizes, but full-on teacher support, so you're able to guide your own learning, like say like essay topics or anything like that. You're able to kind of have your freedom to choose, and which has really helped with university as well, with that transition from high school to university. Yeah, kind of, and it's helped. Also did help me with how my brain works, like learning different learning styles, or yeah, all that kind of stuff. And it was really helpful, but I didn't really know how my brain worked until I did get diagnosed. I was quite stuck with how my brain was, but with that help with like guidance counselors or psychologists or psychiatrists was what really helped me learn how my brain works, because I didn't know, and a lot of stuff didn't really know as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And it sounds, to me as an educator looking at it, it sounds unfortunate that our teachers in schools and system generally isn't perhaps supporting our young people to understand themselves.
Yeah.
Because you're the owners, drivers of those brains, no matter what happens in our classrooms and schools. You've got that brain for your life. You should be in charge of it and understand it. I think that's pretty fundamental. So that understanding yourself first, super important. So that's another set of strategies that we have in there. Another set is around the sensory stuff. As Lily Robertson was talking about, the sensory differences in terms of high school context, super challenging. So we've got a set of strategies around that. Lily Robertson, is there anything in particular that you would have liked or would have been useful for you in those early high school years around the sensory context? Beyond just the headphones, anything else?
I think the biggest thing would probably be understanding from both teachers and my peers, who like to actually be willing to learn what it's like to have sensory processing disorder, because it's all good and well just saying, oh yes, I acknowledge you've got it, but unless you can actively try and put yourself into their shoes, it's very hard to understand. And I know that there's like quite a few like simulations on like YouTube to like simulate that, because I was often told that like, oh, like we're talking at a normal volume, like it's fine, just put your headphones on. But it's like my headphones can only do so much, and like like I just needed them to understand and just have that empathy. Because I think even though I had tools to help with my sensory processing side, physically or mentally, psychologically, just that lack of empathy like was quite hard hitting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big challenge there, and what you've described is that stuff that students can control and do, and also the things that schools and people in schools can control and do. And we need all of those things to come together. It can't just be on our young people to sort everything out. Our next set of tips in the guide is around people, social stuff, finding like minds. Lily Doolan talked earlier about really excited about the social opportunities. Awesome. And Maya said the social stuff was like, really tricky with peers and with teachers. Maya, tell us a little bit about the social kind of realm and your transition into high school or through high school.
Absolutely. Is it okay if I very briefly just touch on something when it comes to how I found out about my brain, just really quickly?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Sweet. I was very lucky to be very self-aware, both for better and worse, through primary school. And for me, that led to, at many points, asking a teacher, hey, could you try explaining this or teaching it in a slightly different way because I don't understand this? And that led to a lot of struggles with something called rejection sensitivity disorder, where dismissiveness, or intentional or not, just getting shut down when I was trying to find a way to learn and understand by an authority figure, by a teacher, would it impact me so much that I would kind of lose all faith and trust in that kind of situation. I would just stop trying in a lot of situations, and that led to a lot of kind of more subtle behavioral issues. And I was very on the ball with how I thought, the way that my brain ticked, but I struggled so much to be able to communicate that to teachers because they just didn't have the time or the awareness of how, because I wasn't diagnosed. It led to a lot of struggles with that. Yeah. Okay, social side. Sorry, that was a big ball to drop, but I just really wanted to make sure I got it out there.
Great. Thank you.
The only reason I ended up getting diagnosed was in year 10. I was in a conversation with some people I was not friends with. I struggled a lot with the concept of how to define someone as a friend, as someone you know. At what point do you become friends? How close are friendships meant to be? I still struggle with that to this day. People are weird. I'm not gonna lie. But I ended up in a conversation about a book series. And I was flapping my hands and going up on the balls of my feet because I was excited as hell. And this girl I barely knew said, hey, do you have autism? Because I do that. I have autism. And I went, I don't know. Maybe, probably. Didn't speak about it again. That's what ended up leading to me getting my diagnosis. Like-minded people and a lot of neurodiverse people will flock together, whether they are aware of it or not. Looking back at the friends I did have, the social times I did feel like I fit in, yeah, we were all neurodiverse. We very much so. None of us were aware of it. It all presented in slightly different ways. But we kind of flocked together, and I've never been able to explain it, but for me, it was simply time. And it sucks that there was nothing that I could do to help myself socially until my diagnosis. But that diagnosis is what ended up helping me take a step back, look at my behaviors. I was very lucky to have a mother who would call me out privately, be like, hey, so I think that you consider this person a friend when they don't think you're the same. And I'd be like, really? And my mother would just sit down and explain it to me. And I'm very lucky. A lot of people don't have that. I ended up getting to the point where I could do that to myself, but it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of time and patience. But high school was rough socially for me, and sometimes I hate to say it, I do not think that could have been avoided aside from an earlier diagnosis.
so interesting. Just those ideas about the social stuff being hard is poorly defined. And we know that many neurodivergent brains want nice, tight, crisp, clear definitions. It's something as educators we can help provide, right? That's for the teachers in the room. It's not that hard to support kids with the things that they need in order to thrive in all aspects of their high school stuff. Finding like minds is added as a tip because we know that there are usually so many more opportunities in high school to meet all sorts of other people. And even if you're not making immediate friendships and lifelong buddies, you are still connecting, you're still experiencing, you're still participating, etc. Okay, our final set of tips that we have in this guide is probably the most challenging end, honestly, but if it's something we can help our students with in advance, or even plant the seed that this is a thing that might be possible for you to do. The final set of tips is around asking for what you need, right? And it is the most challenging for various reasons. Number one, sometimes our neurodivergent kids don't know what they need, which is fine, other than something that's not this. They don't know what they need. They don't know how to ask for it. They don't know who to ask for it. They may have had the experience, as Maya was alluding to, of asking for something, and people go, or as Lily said, just deal with it. That kind of response, which is really challenging for young people. So this set of tips is, yes, challenging, but if we can start our students in this process when they're pre-crunchy times, challenging times in their schooling, maybe they will have more success. So on that note, Lily Armstrong, would you like to share anything about asking for what you need and what your experiences were like for you in doing that?
I personally found asking for help very challenging, as I was a high achiever. Despite the great challenge required for that, I found that the schooling systems, not just at a teacher level, at a structural level, are defined by minimizing failure and correcting deficits rather than maximizing that success and supporting learners' unique brains. And I feel like one of the things that would have helped me most was teachers and everyone, principals, everyone trying to maximize that success rather than minimize the failure. I had a maths teacher who I wasn't engaging with maths at that time. They were doing something very simple. I asked to be challenged more, and they put down in year 10 the NCEA paper in front of me. So even when I did ask for help, I was denied because of this idea and system of minimizing failure. And what I found is that rejection, RSD again, that causes intense stress and anxiety and dysphoria inside me. And it sucks to say, but kind of just understanding that, accepting that, and then moving on and keep on asking for the help that I need, the help that will help me maximize my success, in spite of that negative feeling.
That's embedded in those tips that we've got there, is that it's not a one and done, unfortunately, for our young people. Just helping them understand that, yes, ask for help. If it doesn't work, it's all right. Ask again. Ask a different person. Ask a different way. Keep on with that. often our young people know what they need and know what they want, or at least have a sense of it. So supporting them with the skills to do that well. Charlotte, did you want to add anything on that one about asking for the support that you need?
Yeah, personally, I found it quite difficult for quite some time. But if someone really sees that you're struggling, like approaching them is probably a good thing for me. Was quite helpful getting approached. If you really just got to keep your eyes on like that learner, or have a look around and be open-minded, be like, hey, look, who's struggling, really be engaged with that student, because I know the ones that struggle the most are the ones that can't reach out and find it hard. And it wasn't until about, I think, year 12 or year 13 where my grades really started to shift. Since I was approached like, hey, do you need help with this? And I was really struggling. Or even just like getting help first, even like in a smaller way, like talking to guidance counselor, getting support, being like, hey, how can I do this? Or just sending like a quick email to the teacher that you can support. It doesn't always have to be like the teacher where you're struggling in that class. Even those teachers or your dean can talk to that other teacher, be like, hey, this person needs help. They don't know how to approach you. Blah, blah, blah. Even if you don't know what you need help with, just sending sometimes like a vague email being like, hey, like this class, I'm really struggling. Would I be able to get help because of these reasons? It's quite hard to get to, but once you're really there, it's you can really see it shift and an improvement.
Amazing. So it does have an impact, right? And I think you made that really important point about teachers making the approach as well. Sometimes as teachers, we do have this assumption that if a student needs something, they're just going to ask, which may not be the case at all. So for young people knowing that they can ask, and it can be vague or it can be specific, and that they may need to ask multiple times and multiple people, but also for the educators to be thinking, who might be trying to ask? Who might I need to ask in advance of asking, if that makes sense for the teachers in the room? And there's a phrase I just want to pick up on, just you used earlier, was about more subtle behaviours is something that teachers could notice. What does that mean?
Oh, okay. Oh God, okay. I thought I knew I wasn't normal. I didn't think I was neurodivergent because I didn't know what that meant. There was just the lack of education. My brother got diagnosed with, this does link into that point about subtle behaviors, I swear. My brother got diagnosed with dyslexia when we were very young. I still didn't know what neurodiversity was. I got screened for dyslexia. I got told to my face, you don't have dyslexia, you've got something. That was never followed up in my lifetime. The subtle behaviors, very much for me, were things like the types of disagreements I would face in class. I would have disagreements with my classmates over, I would be clicking a pen or tapping something on the table, and they'd be like, can you not? And I'm like, I wasn't trying to, and it would just cause minor arguments. Everything from the fact that I would not struggle when it came to work I was handed and things I would hand in, but I would struggle in the collaborative learning part of class, where teacher would ask a question, I would ask a follow-up question because I didn't understand the scope of the question, right? Because it's about the specifics. And I was the only one who thought it was about the specifics. So I would say, actually, do you mean this or this? And the teachers would just be like, why are you there? What's the point of asking that question? And I would try and explain myself, but then they're like, no, you're wasting the classroom's time. And that would lead to me then going to them after class and being like, okay, now I'm not wasting the class's time. Can you answer that question? And they would struggle so much with it. You know, like I would struggle with it. They would struggle with knowing what I wanted out of it. I didn't know I was meant to want something out of that conversation. And that led to a lot of weird, subtle conversations that clearly indicated there was a miscommunication. And nobody knew what it was for a long time for me.
It is that noticing that is so fundamental for teachers to be able to do, and to open that noticing process as involving students also. It couldn't be more important. Lily Dolan, about classroom vibe.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of ADHD, well, since I've been diagnosed, I've learned a lot about rejection sensitivity, which we have been talking about. One thing that really, really affected me at primary school, high school, any kind of learning situation was the overall energy in the class. I feel like neurodivergent people quite often, well, this is very much me, it may apply to others, but I can pick up on the kind of vibe of the classroom, whether there has been kind of a negative energy been in there before or a very positive one. Quite often you can tell by just how I feel when I walk into a room. I really struggled with the kind of discipline and the way that teachers would go by discipline, and the types of conversations that they'd have. I think that it's easier to just say, no, you're a naughty kid. Go sit in the corner rather than having kind of a constructive conversation with that child. For me, yeah, it was a big part of kind of that classroom energy, and knowing that the teacher was having a good day, a positive day, even though they might have been having a crap day, but they would have been having a positive day in their classroom and carrying on that energy through to a child. I think I talked about it a bit in the video that we did a while ago, Madeleine. That's probably a bit of a better explanation on what I'm trying to talk about now. But yeah, I think that overall the way that you present yourself in the classroom and the way that you open up to those children can be so effective for them. I'm still in contact with her now, my old French teacher from high school. She was so understanding. She was so lovely. She just very calm class environment, and it really, really helped me get into my work. I actually don't tell anyone, but I was skipping classes to go and do the work in her class because I thrived there. Yeah,
It's so
so
gorgeous. It's such a
yeah,
lovely attendance story.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah. It's something we still giggle about to this day. And she would just kind of write off the attendance for the rest of the day of me being in her classroom, and she didn't mind. But yeah, I think that as an educator, having a really welcoming, inviting, positive feel, and energy coming off yourself is really, really important, and it can affect, for instance, me, a student's whole life. I spent way more time in that classroom than I should have. Had my own dedicated seat and everything, so it was lovely. But yeah, definitely go watch the video if you want kind of a better explanation on what I was talking about. I just thought I'd add my little bit in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right. So our guide has those student stories. It has some sets of tips that are really broad, that have come from students themselves, that are setting up a scene, a tone, a vibe, some strategies in advance to support students in that transition into the high school context, and equipping them directly rather than us as educators doing it to them, for them, at them. a quick rundown summary of the areas of the strategies that we have. Now over to the educators, and then we'll have, if you have questions you'd like to ask our champions or final thoughts from some of our young people, we will have a few minutes then. But just some thoughts for the teachers in the room or the educators of any sort. Thinking through this process of getting support directly at students rather than just doing things at them or to them or giving them a thing. What is it you could do, you could tweak, you could change that is that student first perspective? How might you use a resource like this that is a direct to student guide? What could you build around it? Would you just throw it out into your classroom and say, right, folks, here, take this home, off you go? Or would you build it into something wider? That would be my hunch, my dream, building it into something that's bigger. Or how else can you proactively support that transition into high school contexts for your young people? And just the final point, the final little thing to think through then is when. And I think I said earlier, year 8 and year 9 and ongoing, because it's not we've done a visit day and we did an induction day. That's not the winning approach. Slow and steady and lots of support. Any questions from people who are here that you would like to ask our young people, bearing in mind some, if not all, are going to come back for our Insights panel alongside RTLB and psychologists, so we're going to have all sorts of interesting viewpoints. And just while people are having a think, any final thoughts from our young neurodivergent people about what helped you, particularly in high school and those early high school years, moments, thoughts?
I've got one that comes to mind.
Awesome.
As a teacher, when a student has interest in something that you're teaching, embrace it. Like, yeah, it may be a little bit of problem to try and find more work for them to do. Hell, even asking them, why does this interest you? And then just recommending, why don't you do a little bit of research on that when we're next in the library? Could be enough for that child to find a new special interest. Or maybe just making your room be the safe space so that you're the teacher they go to when they want to skip their other classes and do work in a safe room. Because I did that in high school too. I think it's a not uncommon situation as having a favorite teacher's room to do other classwork in. And being that teacher can make all the positive interactions. It's wonderful.
Amazing. Yeah, be that teacher. Lovely advice. Any other final thoughts from our young neurodivergent people? Thanks, Maya.
Everyone.